In the early dawn of the 19th century, a figure emerged who would alter the very fabric of Europe and reshape the world as we know it. Picture a young man, barely 5 feet tall, born into modest beginnings on the island of Corsica during an era of revolution and turmoil. That man was Napoleon Bonaparte. How did he rise from the ashes of a turbulent childhood to command the armies of a continent? And just how far-reaching were the consequences of his rule? Today, we are diving into the rise and fall of one of history's most enigmatic leaders. Understanding his journey is not merely an exploration of military strategy and political machinations, it's a profound insight into how ambition, brilliance, and ultimately, hubris, can alter the course of nations. You might be wondering, what happened to change Europe forever? Well, buckle up, because this journey promises to unravel the mystery behind the legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte. Let's start with his early years. Born in 1769, Napoleon was the second of 8 children in a family that struggled with financial instability. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, was a lawyer and a political opportunist, while his mother, Letizia, was a strong-willed woman who wielded significant influence over her children. It was in this household that young Napoleon began to develop his formidable character, a mix of ambition, intelligence, and reckless determination. But what truly set him apart was his education. Sent to mainland France for schooling, he excelled, showing remarkable military prowess as he immersed himself in the writings of great strategists like Sun Tzu and modern military leaders of his time. Here's something you didn't expect: this young Corsican boy, who spoke with a thick accent and felt like an outsider among the French aristocracy, would one day crown himself Emperor of the French. His resilience would see him fighting through the ranks of the military during the French Revolution, a time when chaos reigned, and opportunities flourished for the audacious. It was a period when the common man could rise to positions previously reserved for nobility. A quick rise through the military, marked by significant victories such as the Siege of Toulon in 1793, would pave his path to success. As the revolution unfolded, France was engulfed in political strife and war with several nations seeking to drag it back into the clutches of monarchy. Enter Napoleon, who, in 1799, seized the moment, orchestrating a coup d'état that would install him at the helm of the French government as first consul. But you might be wondering, how did a general of limited fame manage to accomplish such a feat? The answer lies in his exceptional ability to read the political landscape like a game of chess, anticipating moves and countermoves with a calculating mind. During this time of transformation, Napoleon implemented sweeping reforms, not just in military strategy but in law, education, and governance. One of his most remarkable legacies is undoubtedly the Napoleonic Code, which established a uniform legal code that would influence many governments around the world. This marked a fundamental shift in French society, promoting principles of equality before the law, secularism, and the abolition of feudal privileges. But hold on, what comes next will leave you speechless. Napoleon's ambitions reached far beyond France. Fueled by success and the belief that he was destined for greatness, he would venture into a series of military campaigns across Europe, known as the Napoleonic Wars. At its height, his empire dominated large swaths of the continent, stretching from Spain to Russia. With each victory, the Battle of Austerlitz being one of his most celebrated, his influence and power grew exponentially, but so too did his arrogance. What might surprise you is that for all his accomplishments, Napoleon was also a man of contradictions. While he sought to instill liberal values in conquered nations, he also imposed his rule with an iron fist. Despite championing revolutionary principles, he reinstated a form of autocracy, calling himself emperor in 1804. This contradiction ignited both admiration and disdain. The people of Europe were left torn. Many embraced the order he brought, while others clamored for the liberty they believed they had fought for in the revolution. As Napoleon's power ballooned, so did the coalition of adversaries against him. The fabric of his empire was fraying, held together by nothing more than sheer force and the relentless ambition that had driven him from obscurity to greatness. Every move Napoleon made was under intense scrutiny, not just from his adversaries but from those within his ranks. The question loomed large: could one man's ambition sustain an empire built on both the ideals of revolution and the reality of autocracy? During the zenith of his power, Napoleon's crowning achievement was the establishment of the Continental System, an ambitious plan to cripple Britain's economy by prohibiting trade with the British. This bold move, however, turned out to be a double-edged sword, disrupting economies across Europe, including those of his allies. The repercussions set the stage for conflict, as growing dissatisfaction among nations led to the unification of a formidable resistance. Imagine how the tides began to shift as more nations became disillusioned. Spain faced the brutal aftermath of a guerrilla war against French invaders, and Prussia, once a beaten foe, began organizing its forces, determined to reclaim its lost pride. Here's a thought: what happens to an empire when the very nations that once bowed before it begin to resist? As the stakes grew higher, Napoleon believed he could control destiny through sheer military might. But history has a way of humbling even the most powerful. The decision to invade Russia in 1812 proved catastrophic. With an army marching into the harsh winter, the conditions turned against him in ways no strategist could predict. The infamous Russian campaign, aimed at forcing Tsar Alexander I to remain within the Continental System, turned into a nightmare: massive losses, treacherous retreats, and the fall of morale. We often think of military campaigns as battles fought on the field, but when the elements, or the weather, become your greatest enemy, the consequences can be dire. As he returned to France, staggering from defeat, the cracks in his empire widened to fissures. The resolve of opposing nations fueled a coalition intent on his downfall. Initially exiled to Elba, a mere blip in the Mediterranean, it seemed Napoleon's reign had come to a gradual close. But little did the world know that the story was far from over. In a shocking twist, he escaped, returning to the embrace of a France that still revered him, leading to a brief but exhilarating resurgence known as the 100 Days. But what followed was the Battle of Waterloo, a conclusive showdown where his forces met not only the British but also a coalition of Prussian troops. The result? A pivotal defeat that shattered the Napoleonic dream once and for all. To think, a man who once held an empire in his hands was felled by fate and formidable alliances. Napoleon's final exile to St. Helena marked the end of an era, but did he leave behind only ashes, or something far more significant? As we step into this exploration of the legacy left in the wake of his rise and fall, we'll discover how one man's vision changed Europe, influencing political structures, societal norms, and the global order for generations to come. What remains to be unpacked is the intricate tapestry of a leader whose life embodies the very essence of ambition, success, recklessness, and ultimate failure. So, before we continue diving into the enduring impact of Napoleon's reign, let's pause to consider, how did an individual orchestrate a transformation that rippled through history in such profound ways? And more importantly, what lessons can we extract from his journey? Stay tuned as we unravel the final threads of Napoleon's tale, examining how his legacy continues to influence the contours of modern Europe and the world today. As we delve deeper into the legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte, it is essential to highlight how the political landscape of Europe was irrevocably changed by his actions. His drive for a unified Europe under French hegemony may have crumbled, but the ideas he championed during his reign continued to resonate far beyond his defeat at Waterloo. We will explore how the ripple effects of his rule influenced nationalism, liberalism, and the balance of power throughout the 19th century and into the modern era. After Napoleon's exile to St. Helena, Europe entered a phase of restoration and realignment. The Congress of Vienna, 1814 to 1815, emerged as a diplomatic endeavor to restore the old order and prevent any future attempts at expansionist tyranny. A coalition of European powers, led by figures like Austrian Foreign Minister Clemens von Metternich, sought to establish a balance that would keep any single power from dominating the continent as Napoleon had done. While this Congress symbolized an effort to roll back the revolutionary changes that had swept Europe, it also inadvertently laid the groundwork for a new kind of conflict, one rooted in national identity and self-determination. Napoleon's legacy also manifested itself through the rise of nationalism. Although he aimed for a France-centric empire, his conquests ignited a sense of national consciousness across various European states. Subjugated populations started to resist French rule, leading to an awakening of national sentiments. The German states, for example, began to envision unification, fueled by shared language, culture, and history, despite being fragmented under Napoleonic control. In Italy, the struggle against French domination paved the way for the Risorgimento, a movement that eventually unified the nation. Interestingly, Napoleon also inspired nationalistic fervor among those he considered subjects. His ability to propel the idea of national pride, even while enforcing his rule, was paradoxical. The revolutionary ideals of liberty and equality, initially propagated by France, began to spark revolutions that challenged monarchies across Europe. From the Latin American Wars of Independence to the Greek War of Independence against Ottoman rule, Napoleon's vision of a world without feudal chains and rigid hierarchies had an unexpected legacy. It propelled a wave of revolutions that would redefine traditional power structures. However, not all of his influences were purely progressive. The authoritarian tendencies shown during his reign laid a foundation that some nations adopted, perpetuating oppressive regimes under the guise of nationalism. France's own experience with Napoleonic governance switched from revolutionary fervor to the realities of autocratic rule, raising concerns about the legacy of power concentrated in one man's hands. The balancing act between liberty and authority became a recurring theme in European politics, as nations navigated the complex intersection of these two ideals. A critical consequence of Napoleon's reign was the reconfiguration of international relations. The ideal of collective security originated from the concert of powers established at the Congress of Vienna. Major powers created a diplomatic framework aimed at resolving conflicts through negotiations rather than warfare. Still, beneath the surface, the ambitions seen in Napoleon lingered as nations strategized on how to counterbalance each other's power while pursuing their interests. This diplomacy learned lessons from the Napoleonic Wars, as alliances and coalitions became a blueprint for future international dealings. Napoleon's influence extended beyond politics and into the realms of military organization and strategy. His ideas on warfare transformed how armies were structured and operated. The principles of mass conscription, meritocracy, and rapid maneuvering reshaped military doctrines not just in France but across Europe. By emphasizing the importance of supply lines and logistics, he challenged the traditional views of warfare and inspired future generations of military leaders. The impact of his tactics can be seen in the wars that unfolded throughout the 19th century, setting the stage for a new breed of warfare that would involve entire nations rather than just armies. The age of revolutions fueled by the Napoleonic spirit brought lessons of failure and resilience as well. The aftermath of his campaigns taught subsequent leaders and nations that ambition must be tempered with caution. The pursuit of expansion without regards to local sentiments could lead to devastating consequences, as illustrated by the resistance sparked across Europe. Simultaneously, the risks taken during his campaigns illustrated how individual leaders could affect the fates of entire nations, leading to the rise of a more prominent role for citizens in governance, a notion that germinated in the revolutionary ideals Napoleon initially sought to embody. Fast forward to the 20th century, the echoes of Napoleon's empire and the nationalistic fervor he incited would help shape thoughts around self-determination and national identity amid the upheavals of the world wars. The legacy of political ideologies, mixed with the lessons learned from the failures of absolute leaders like Napoleon, became crucial forms of discourse among emerging nations and colonial powers. Leaders worldwide began to grapple with the duality of power and responsibility that defined Napoleon's era. One of the most poignant lessons we draw from Napoleon's tale relates to the human propensity for ambition. His meteoric rise correlates with a dissection of the self, how ambition can interweave with genius, leading to heights of glory or depths of downfall. The concept of hubris, often associated with tragic figures from ancient lore to modern contexts, becomes relevant as we dissect the duality of Napoleon's legacy. His unyielding self-belief, contrasted with a continually shifting political reality, serves as a lesson in leadership dynamics. Lead with vision, yes, but understand the limits of one's own power. As we unravel this narrative, consider, how does one individual's ambition influence the course of nations? Napoleon's life encapsulates how personal ambitions, when unfettered, can spiral into consequences that change the worldview. His story urges us to reflect on modern leaders and their aspirations, underscoring the notion that their decisions can have far-reaching implications for both freedom and oppression. What remains in discussion is the profound idea that Napoleon, for all his complexities, merely accentuated the state of humanity. Nations today still wrestle with the balance between the ideals of liberty championed during the Revolution and the realities of governance that require a degree of authority. The central tenets of the Napoleonic Code, equality, secularism, meritocracy, continue to pervade political dialogues, reminding us that while leaders like Napoleon might rise and fall, the ideas they propagate can have enduring effects. In this exploration of one of history's most captivating figures, we recognize that Napoleon Bonaparte was not just a military leader or emperor, he was a catalyst of change. His life can be viewed as an indicative lens through which we reflect on the notions of ambition, power, and legacy within the human narrative. The lessons drawn from his ascent and eventual fall challenge us to ponder, how might we navigate our ambitions within the broader tapestry of our times, ensuring that they serve the greater good rather than lead us into chains of our own making. In conclusion, the story of Napoleon Bonaparte invites us to both admire and scrutinize the intricacies of leadership, ambition, and governance. His life embodies the complexities that arise when the ideals of revolution encounter the stark realities of power. The legacy he left behind is not merely a cautionary tale but an enduring testament to the unpredictable nature of history. As we reflect on his journey, we are reminded that the aspirations of individuals resonate far beyond their immediate environments, shaping the trajectory of nations and hinting at the potential for both remarkable progress and devastating failure. Indeed, the image of a small Corsican boy claiming the mantle of emperor stands etched in history, a poignant reminder that greatness always comes at a price.